Good evening. Welcome to the October 16th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. At this time, please silence all your electronic devices. If you're going to hold a private conversation, please take it outside. This meeting is being recorded by FCTV. If there's anyone else recording this meeting, please identify yourself for the record. If you're here to speak on a matter, and we welcome you to do so, please do so at the appropriate time, up at the podium, and state your name for the record. First up, other business, review and vote conservation restriction for 102 Chappaquoit Road and map parcel 2408000012.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan Decker. I'm the Director of the Land Protection Program with the Buzzards Bay Coalition. And the Buzzards Bay Coalition, along with the 300 Committee, are before you this evening seeking your support for a conservation restriction on the property identified as 102 Chappaquoit Road. I've provided the office with the conservation restriction. I've provided a series of maps. I assume if you don't have the maps with you, I've got handouts if you need them or want them. I also had the CR with you, and what I'm seeking this evening in conjunction with Leonard Johnson from the 300 Committee, as I said, is your support for this conservation restriction by the signing of the municipal certification. I'm happy to give you a little detail on the conservation restriction. This is a 9-acre parcel. It's actually two separate parcels. Principally, it's 102 Chappaquoit Road. There's a small 1/10 of an acre parcel that is actually on the north side of Chappaquoit Road on the harbor. And before I proceed any further, would anybody like maps? I offered them and then didn't bring them to you. If you'd like them, I'm happy to bring them up. That is a map. I have aerial map of the property that I'm happy to hand out to you as well. So the property that you're looking at has a residential structure there in the middle of it. The yellow oblong that you will see on the first page is actually an exclusion. That simply means that that portion of the property, which equates to 2 acres, is not to be under the strictures of the conservation restriction. It's where the house and the garage is. And what you'll see on the second page are some of the natural resources that this property contains. It is mapped and designated by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as primarily critical natural landscape. As you may be aware, that is a designation that these lands are critical buffer for core habitat and or rare species habitat, which are actually indicated on the same map but aren't present on the property itself. What we're seeking to do is actually limit the potential development of this property and retain the natural resources that are there. The landowners that we are doing this conservation restriction project with have agreed to no further subdivision and no building outside of the exclusion area. There's habitat management or vegetation management, I should say. It's actually a fairly innocuous CR simply because there's not a lot outside of subdivision that could occur on this property. I don't want to belabor the meeting or lengthen it by any means. I'm happy to answer questions, but essentially the municipal certification speaks to the frontage not only on Harbor Head that's being protected, but also the fact that it does have biomap designated areas and is supportive of open space efforts that the town of Falmouth is undertaking. As I said, I'm happy to answer questions about the CR itself, but again, specifically, I'm seeking your vote to support the conservation restriction with the signing of the municipal certification which speaks to the conservation values that are being protected. My next step, as you may be aware, after this meeting, is to be in front of the Board of Selectmen, which I would provide them with the signed municipal certification showing this board, this commission's support of the project. With that, as I said, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Jen, do you want to start?
Yes. Hi, Alan. How are you?
I'm well, thank
So-
you.
I just have a couple of questions about some of the reserved rights, if you can talk myself and the board through them.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, and I might have missed it, I'm just looking where the applicant would have to obtain permission of the Conservation Commission within their jurisdiction. And I just can't put my finger on it. but
Sure.
just-
No, I'm happy to point you to that. It's under paragraph 2, B as in boy, the reserved rights and exceptions. The very first reserved right, which is labeled permits, regulations, and
Okay,
laws.
okay. I was looking everywhere else but that.
No,
I'm
and
like,
that's fine.
Why am I not, like,
That's
because I
fine.
skip right over that. Okay, so my first question, I basically am gonna, and I know you know which three I'm gonna have, or, yeah, four I'm gonna have questions
I'm happy to
on.
talk about them.
Reserve right number 3, reserve right 10, 11, and 12,
Okay,
just so we have an understanding.
all right. So what's your question concerning
I'm
trails,
just,
paths, and wood roads?
The trails, path, and wood roads,
Yes, ma'am.
typically, the commission within their jurisdiction allows a path to be the width of 10 feet. What would the purpose of a 10-foot wide path be on the premises?
Generally, a 10-foot width allows individuals to comfortably walk side by side as they're headed to a direction. It also allows passersby to pass without having to step aside, that type of thing. It's what we have typically done with trails and paths.
On properties owned by the Buzzards Bay Coalition?
On properties that we own, when we're creating trails, and it's also a fairly standard width with conservation restrictions that we've done. Now, this property may not be suitable for a woods road. It's not of the typical size that a road might be needed outside of the driveway, and the driveway's in the exclusion,
Okay,
so.
okay. And, sorry, I'm just trying to help Mr. Bird here.
Of course.
Kayak storage, the storage of up to 6 watercraft, and that would be for anyone, or anyone?
Well, for the landowners and
For the
their
landowner.
guests, correct. This property's not open to the public.
That's, okay, so that's what I was wondering, is so.
No, it's a resident, it's a
It'll be-
residential property, so.
Why, again, so it goes back to why would the path need to be 10 feet? If it's just a residential property and it's not open to the general public, will there be that much traffic passing back and forth?
I don't know.
Okay,
This is what we worked out in negotiations with the landowner. We're comfortable with it, the 300 committee is comfortable with it.
well, within areas of, the commission's jurisdiction, that might not be within their comfort level.
Of course,
I'm just
and
putting that out there.
that is completely
Okay.
understood.
Okay.
And as you know,
Outside of our jurisdiction, 10 feet wide, go ahead.
well, as you know, simply having the reserved right doesn't mean it's gonna
No.
end up being
Okay.
there. Yep,
And so the 6 non-motorized watercraft would be for the residential property use?
correct,
Okay.
yes, correct.
Okay. And I know I've had conversations with the Buzzards Bay Coalition about the small watercraft access in the dock structures. That's why I did
Sure.
provide the board with this. A majority of the property is within a velocity zone, so those types of structures are prohibited, with the possible exception of a small removable staircase to access the water. There are portions of the property that do fall within the AE zone that that type of structure may be, better suited in that area, although unfortunately, that is the area where the salt marsh is a little bit wider than in some of the other areas, so.
Understood.
I know I talked to, some members of the Buzzard Bay Coalition and just said that permitting that type of structure could be a little tricky. I'm not saying it's unsurmountable, but it could be tricky.
Sure, no, and again, that is understood.
And the skiff out haul,
Ditto.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
If we allow one skiff out haul in West Falmouth Harbor, they will appear everywhere. So I just wanted to get that on the record, that those might be a little bit tricky.
Of course,
Okay,
of course.
that was it.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're very welcome.
Oh, one other thing, the kayak canoe storage, do you have any idea where they would want to locate that? Probably where any sort of access to the water would be, correct?
Yes, I think that's an accurate statement.
Okay.
I don't know of a specific location that's been discussed or that they have in mind.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's Mr. Chairman.
The 2-acre exclusion where the house is
Yes.
that's a permanent exclusion forever?
Well, it's an exclusion in regards to the conservation restriction. That's the only importance that has. It would be part of the conservation restriction moving, or not part of the conservation restriction. It's excluded from the CR into the future. The only way that the size of that would change was if it was narrowed or lessened, not narrowed, lessened. An amendment to the conservation restriction has to be either neutral or more protective of the natural resources. And speaking for the coalition, and I think I can speak for the 300 committee, trying to enlarge the excluded area is a lessening of the protections, so that's not going to happen.
So within that excluded area, do the owners, are they theoretically able to subdivide that?
I'm not going to answer that simply because I'm not aware of the zoning that's
Well,
in
I
that
understand
area.
that the zoning
But,
and conservation and a lot of other things may be problematic,
sure.
but there's always a possibility.
Well, what I will tell you is that the conservation restriction does not apply inside the yellow square, the yellow oblong. It does not, and that's the only thing I can tell you. The land is still subject to all of the other regulation that land in that part of the town is subject to. If that makes sense.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Great, thank you.
That sticks in my throat a little bit, but I don't have any other questions.
Well, and I don't want to belabor the point, but just to help you understand how we came to the size of 2 acres, what we're trying to do is encompass all of the existing structures that are there, the residence and the garage, and the landowners wanted a level of vegetation management that we candidly weren't comfortable with, but in order to allow the project to come to fruition, we came to an understanding on the exclusion being 2 acres in size.
Okay.
Good. Kevin?
No questions.
All right.
Will they be asking for a Vista corridor?
Will they be asking for a Vista Quarter?
Some point?
They're not asking for an enlargement of a Vista corridor. Part of the reason the exclusion is shaped as it is, at the size it is, has to do with their wanting to maintain
Okay.
the vista that they have.
So they won't be able to go out onto the conservation restricted area to have a Vista?
Not beyond what they currently have now, which, as I understand it, there is a view, there is a bit of a vista viewing, a tunnel, if you will. If you're looking at the map that runs east, you can make it out maybe
Yeah,
a
I
quarter of the way up from the stone wall. They would be able to maintain the openness of that.
Well, it is the least vegetated area on the 9 acres, so I can understand why that sort of went that way. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Russ,
No questions.
Steve?
Where do you think the kayaks would be?
I'm sorry, I don't think.
But it would be within the yellow box?
No, sir.
No,
Okay.
outside the yellow.
They could
inside
be in the
red.
yellow box, they absolutely could, but they have the ability to be within the red area at an appropriate location.
Great, thank you.
No questions.
Mark?
No questions.
Okay. The trail, the 10-foot versus 4-foot.
I mean, they would have to, any work they're gonna do within the commission's jurisdiction would have to come before the commission, so you can make a determination at that time.
Same with the dock.
Same with the dock, same with the walkway, same with the staircase, dinghy rack, outhall,
Okay.
any work.
And I'm sorry, you said there's no public access necessarily?
This
Private
property
land.
does not. So, there's no general right of public access. Let me take a quick look, because I believe, okay, we have an element of public access in that the landowners are allowing up to 4 visitations of the property by groups led by either the coalition or the 300 committee for scenic interpretation, environmental, further education, looking at the salt marsh, that type of thing. They do have to be escorted, and they would have to be at at a mutually agreeable time and date. That's the level of access by non-property owners that
Thank you.
they've agreed to.
All right, what's your pleasure?
I make a motion to accept the conservation restriction for 102 Chapel Point Road.
Second.
And you need to say the other little parcel too.
And map parcel 24, 08000012.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Up here.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you want us to give the municipal cert to the 300 committee later this week, after they sign it this evening, or?
That would be just fine. Is that the normal course to sign after
Yeah,
the meeting
I
is
mean,
done?
yeah.
Okay. Can I hand one up to you? Not that it's any different, it just happens to be on
No.
file.
I mean, if you'd like to take it with you, they can sign it.
Well,
right
I would
now.
love to.
There you go,
but I
Courtney.
also don't wanna,
It's okay.
okay. Thank you very much.
You can start the rest of the meeting, you guys can just sign it.
Okay, next up, vote minutes, October 2nd, 2019. Anybody?
I make a motion to accept the
16th.
minutes of October 2nd.
So moved, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Minutes, October 9th, 2019.
I read those and they appear to be in order, sir.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, requests for determination of applicability. First up, Mark Garfield, 16 Massachusetts Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct an addition within flood zone AE.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, Upper Cape Tree, 65 Irving Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to Vista Prune according to FWR 10.1810B.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the statement bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, David March, 94 Nantucket Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to renovate the existing dwelling and construct a second-floor addition.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the statement bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed under this RDA. I would like to add that this RDA does not allow for the removal or replacement of the first floor exterior walls and does not allow for removal or replacement or alteration of the existing foundation.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, K.S. Khan, 438 Seacoast Shores Boulevard, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct maintenance of existing timber stairs, licensed boardwalk, ramp, and pier.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the statement bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, Michael McGordy, 10 Cypress Street, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, R-A-Z-E, and reconstruct existing dwelling with associated clearing, grading, and landscaping within flood zone AE.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the statement bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Question?
We have a motion and a second. Questions?
Yeah, the reason this doesn't rise to the level of a notice is,
Only within the flood.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Send it down to these.
Yeah. Nice handwriting for someone with gnarly knuckles.
I practice.
Isn't that nice? Just an observation. Can we focus?
Lauren's gonna
Get a
jump
manicure.
about 2 seconds.
Continued hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up,
Quorum? I know I can go home.
this camera's, you know.
Decorum, decorum.
Scott and Isla Lutz, 109 Madeline Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, R-A-Z-E, and rebuild the existing structure to include upgraded Title V septic system, new driveway, rebuild dock, mitigation plantings, invasive species management, and all associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the quorum for this project is Courtney, Kevin, Jamie, Russell, Steve, and Peter. Mark, you are released as well. Yes, you are.
You're welcome to stay.
You're welcome to stay. I mean, you did attend the first hearing, so if you wanna stay, you can, but you're not on the quorum.
Kevin?
You don't get any more points, though.
What? No.
Isn't this, raising, you're not really rebuilding the existing structure.
No, because it's raised. Yeah, it is kind of a,
I wonder if there's a legal loophole for that.
I wonder.
Raise and rebuild the existing structure. You're not rebuilding it.
It's being raised.
You can't do both.
USBF,
Can ask questions.
this one right here. That look like you?
Yeah, originally they only used the
Cool,
foundation.
all right, thank you
Alright.
so much, yes.
Double click it, Wayne.
No, maybe I'm too old for this stuff, but I like it.
Well, that's your narrative.
That's my narrative, so, just going through it, maybe I should just put up the first plan, I think that's easier.
That would be helpful.
Okay, I've referred to in the narrative, you all have the narrative of Plan 1 of 2, Plan 2 of 2. Oh, good evening, by the way, my name is Wayne Tavares, I'm representing Scott and Ella Lutz in this project. So we're trying to take care of a few details that we talked about last time. So Plan 1 has shown the new location of the septic system, corrected, and the pump chamber, and the leaching pit, front stairs. The driveway, we listened to the neighbor last time, we took away a 3-across driveway. We also spoke to the building inspector, and as far as he knows, there's nothing wrong with 3-across driveway, but we made it 2 across. There's no observation of a driveway to a property line, so we still made it 5 feet from the property line. So we have reconfigured that driveway. We've had the plan stamped by a PLS. We have put a limit of work on the plan. There was dry wells that were asked for, and we've put those leading to, from the front corners and the side corners of the house. So let's see, septic system was moved. The utilities were put on the front. We did have the old water gate, so we used the water gate, and we came in this water gate straight into the new house. And we used this area over here for the gas gate, because gas is in the street, and the Lutzes would like to use and connect to natural gas. And we've kept the overhead wiring from the old house and just connected it to the new house. If it becomes available to go underground, I think that's a choice the owner should make. It was also asked that the boat mooring be put on. I had it on the cross-section, the boat mooring, and I put Scott's boat, which you see at the bottom of the plan. And that's properly sized for where it would be moored. So, the impact table up top reflects all the changes here. We have a net plus in this particular case, so there is no mitigation that is required. We do have, as before, the, not mandatory, but the beneficial plant border along the salt marsh and above the BVW. It's actually in the upland area. And we have the list of plants that are going in there and the quantity. It's 461 square feet. We have placed the 12 cedars up in this area to replace the trees that were moved. Oh, in this area here, there was some cutting of brush in the lower area, down and through here. Let me see if I can get rid of this thing here. But we've placed 6 Rhodosia dogwoods, or 9 Rosa rugosa, depending on the board's sensibilities towards Rosa rugosa. That was what was there. So I've always understood if Rosa rugosa existed, you can put it back again. So there's a choice. If you'd like me to define the choice, I'll either throw it open, or I'd rather do this Rosa rugosa, much hardier. That's about it on this plan of things. This also reflects the topographical plan that we'll be showing later. If there's any questions on this plan, I'll move on to the next one. Okay, any questions?
Just quick question. Wayne, didn't you tell Kevin and I that the vegetation removed that where you want to put the rugosa rose was scrub oak? The last hearing?
I was wrong.
Oh,
Yep, I have a picture.
that's, I would like to,
It was.
getting scrub oak and
Yeah, it's
rugosa rose, and
my mistake.
you were way off base.
That's That's right, I was way off base. And I went down there and I looked at it, you get the little Rosa rugosa showing their head in that corner. So that's why I was picking the Rosa rugosa. But it's your choice, you want Cornus rugosa, I'll use red twig dogwood. Which is your choice?
Bayberry?
Bayberry. You want bayberry? It burns, it's gonna burn there.
No, I don't know, I've seen it survive.
Okay, you don't want Rosa rugosa?
But the board can decide.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Should we do that now as we go along?
No, let's go on.
Any other questions on this plan?
John, you good?
Hmm?
You good?
Yeah.
Peter?
Rose Rugosa.
Steve?
Take off
Us?
Yeah, I'm good.
Kevin? Courtney?
Rosa rugosa, why did you pick it?
Because when I went down there to see if truly it was scrub oak that was taken out, it was Rosa rugosa that was growing back about this tall. So that's what was cleaned out. There's also high tide bush in that area. I have high tide in the beneficial 161 square foot area, so I didn't want to add anything the same. I made something different.
I mean, personally, I don't have a heartthrob about it. I mean, it's theoretically an invasive, but it's been here since the mid-1700s and
Right, it doesn't meet all the criteria of invasive.
lives very well in harsh environments.
There you go.
Hol-
It should be
holds-
used on beaches more
Holds
as far as
dunes,
I'm.
it provides habitat, you know.
Yeah, it's not a good habitat plant, you're right. So maybe we'll use the cornice.
So as I say, I mean,
Or
I
the
don't
bayberry.
personally have an issue with it at all.
Okay, great. All right, Plan 2. This plan was the same as before. We're showing the first floor, the foundation floor at 7 feet. It's outside of the 25-foot buffer zone. That's the natural grade that was there. We also wanted the mooring for the boat, so you can see where the boat is on the mooring. We had discussion about the dock, and apparently the dock passed muster, at least I hope so. We show the vents on the side and how they work with grading. They're 1 foot above the 7-foot elevation. I may have made the mistake of calling these breakaway panels in the back, and I should have showed that on the plan view. I can go back to the plan view. They are not breakaway panels. They are fixed panels that have smart vents in them. And you can see them here, 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 and here. We sort of cleared that with the old plan, or the plan from the structural engineer with all the smart vents in there. Nothing has changed. So, I don't have those plans with me, but I think you had them in the old folder. So these are fixed panels with smart vents in there, not breakaway.
Did you have any issue with the foundation?
Any questions? So far, we show the structure and how the structure would be built as far as the dock is concerned. The calculations from the structural engineer involve these freestanding stanchions with Bigfoot underneath so that velocity zone water can pass through them. Here is the 25-foot setback for the Falmouth velocity zone. Here's the true FEMA velocity zone, and the house sits back from there. And the concrete in the foundation has structurals as well.
What was that?
Dock? Any issue with the dock? Because we covered that, right?
No issues with the dock? We talked about the dock?
Sorry, I was just,
Size of the pile.
Okay, then, you had asked for a special plan, so I colored this one up. This is a topography plan showing how the water will run out of the front yard. As I mentioned last week, we put a high point in the front. Sorry, I keep pointing to it that way. At 10.3, we're trying to minimize the number of steps down the front, and we're trying to, these two squiggly lines on either side, take the high point and they pitch the water around the sides, both ways. The neighbor, who is also here, mentioned about a 2-foot fill in here. She wasn't too far off. It's probably a 20-inch fill necessary to get the driveway to work. However, none of the contours are changed in such a way that they're any more dramatic than allowing human use in the terms of this driveway. Had the driveway put on the other side, it would have been on a level surface. So it had to be put here because it's juxtaposed on this very tough, narrow, small site from the septic system. Rather than parking on top of the septic system, which would require venting and all that, we've moved it over and through on this side, and the house placed in the middle. So the design hasn't changed. These X's on the plan are where the contours, these are natural contours. There's the 4, there's the 6, natural. And then it was over to here, and it X's out because we have to do some filling, not much filling. Here's the old wall. That wall is being disbanded. Jen asked about what happens to the slough off of it. This wall in this area below these 2 hollies, it's so low, it's only 1.5 feet, if that, so it'll just slough off at the angle that it is, and I showed the dotted line of the slough as it goes across. And that means that this contour, which went deviated here, will now reconnect on the blue line to the existing 4-foot contour that's on the north side of this lot. The same thing goes for the 6-foot contour, which, because of the walls of the old house, this is a cleaned-up plan, I took the old house off of here. This went over this way, so it was X'd out. Now it's just continuing on. You cannot change the 6-foot contour that's under the holly trees because you'll kill the hollies. So this now reconnects because those walls are gone. So that's how this works. It's a fairly simple grading plan. And the same thing is here. Here's the 8-foot contour, which again exists here. And now that's where it's being X'd out. It also carries through, here it carries through the foundation. That's why this is at 7 feet, by the way, is because there's the 8-foot contour going through the foundation. Comes out the other side. We're Xing it out here in order to give a little bit more room for this grade, which is 10.3 here, 10 feet right here. It's going to be 10 feet and probably sloping down to about 9.5 right at this point. Then from there, there'll be a little bit of a ramp down to 8 feet. So this is the deviation. This is the X'd out old contours. So they all meet, they all work. There's not a tremendous amount in here to really discuss. There has been some walls that have been removed, and I think there's some confusion going on with as far as where the old contours went, why they returned, et cetera, from the old time. But there's not really any fill that we're putting in here, or much fill. It's just connecting contours that should be connected, that were interrupted before by retaining walls that were in this area. I'll be glad to go back and show you the superimposed plan, and I'll do that, actually, I'll do that quickly. Here's the superimposed plan. Here is all the junk that's been removed, or has to be removed, from the old site. So this contour, here's the 6-foot contour, comes right up to the wall. And then it has to stop because it's bumping into the wall. So all this comes in here. This is going to allow the 6-foot contour to keep going and reconnect with the 6-foot that's above here. So that's all that is. And back here. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And this plan takes a while to come up. This is Linda's plan. She was the septic designer that came back to having to redesign this plan again. She has now made everything conform, the steps, the back deck, the steps off of the deck, the driveway now conforms. I asked her not to put the driveway in. Guess what? Septic designers need to put the driveway on to show whether or not they're putting H20 material to support the driveway. So that being said, and Board of Health has approved the septic plans. I think we've followed this through as well as possible, so I'll throw it open to the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wayne. Anything else? Any further discussion from the board? Okay, we have a motion,
Motion to accept,
close.
close the hearing.
Second?
You have,
No,
Hold
we
on.
know.
We have a motion and a second. Do you have anything? Any public comment?
that's the site plan.
It's the same.
Wayne, just bring up the site plan, it's a little easier to look at than the septic plan. I know, but it's a little,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
So again, my name is Carla Usalis, and I'm in a butter. Just have two questions, or two, I guess, points I wanted to make is, first, on the foundation plan, it actually spells out that there's breakaway panels, so I think there's been a change. If you look at note 6 on the foundation plan, it calls for a breakaway panel with breakaway screw schedule. So I'm not sure if this was a last-minute change, or, so the foundation plan doesn't reflect what Mr. Tavares just said. And secondly, I'm not sure if the Japanese maple, which sits right on the edge of the leaching field, needs to come down. There's 14 trees that have X's in them, and then there would be 15 if that one comes down as well. So there's some math that is a little bit awry. And I guess since I'm here, the third point too is the amount of fill in here, this retaining wall extends to the foundation. So it's a little bit more than de minimis. So I just want to bring that to your attention. That's it.
Where did you say the construction note was for the,
It's note 6. There's 3 options for there's 8-foot wide openings on the foundation plan, and note 6 says it could be lattice work, 1-inch space boards, or breakaway panels that, there needs to be a breakaway screw schedule, I think it says, or.
here we go. I mean, either or, I mean, they're not required to put breakaway panels in an A zone, they are just required to have the flood vents. If the applicant wanted to put the breakaway panels in an AE, I don't know how code handles that, guys. Does it? No. So, that would be caught at a building permit, thing.
Regarding the trees, I've been busy counting trees. I came in and spoke with the neighbor off the record in the beginning, you mentioned about the trees. And I think one of the things here, things have been moved, like the driveway was moved, et cetera, the septic system was moved, whatever. And I think, we counted, I think she's right, but I think we only counted 13. So be it. If there's 13 trees that were removed, we'll be glad to give you 13 trees back again. But that's what we counted. There is one tree that's remaining, so I don't know if that one was counted as being removed. But nonetheless, what the number is was reflective, certainly no thoughts of trying to fool the board or whatever. It's just a matter of things we're moving on this plan. So if it is 13, we'd be glad to put 13, and you can make a contingency, or a condition, excuse me, of the order of conditions to add a 13th tree. And thanks for explaining the breakaway panels.
One, two,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
you can handle it, the tree of compliance thing. That's where I'm gonna go with that one.
Okay. Any further comments from public? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Call for the vote, close the hearing, take it under advisement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you for your patience. Appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.